Hi, I'm Deboki and this is Okie Dokie Boki. It's been a while since I've made a video for my channel, and the video that I am posting today is actually a video that I've had in the works for like a year at this point. Usually I talk about books on this channel, but I do sometimes dabble in talking about personal things, including talking about my experiences with miscarriage. And so last year, I had a baby, which was very exciting. It's still very exciting. He's very cute. I love my baby so much. He's adorable. Last year, I filmed a video that I was going to post about my experience of pregnancy, but for reasons that will be very clear as you watch the video, I had a hard time actually getting around to posting it. And so I just haven't gotten to it, but I have really wanted to post it because I've always wanted to make this video about the experience of going through pregnancy after miscarriage. So like in the time since I've had the baby, I've been like, cool, I'm gonna post that video. But in the process of editing it, what I was originally thinking was I was gonna have this video that was about my experience about the first and second trimester that I filmed at the time, that I filmed last year. And then I would film another video like within the last few months that would be about the third and fourth trimester life. Fourth trimester is like that newborn stage, if you're not familiar with that term. And it's basically kind of refers to both recovering from pregnancy, but also in childbirth, but also like that big transition into motherhood that you're going through as you're physically healing. So yeah, that was my plan originally, like just edit these two, like just film these two separate parts together, edit them into one big video. But as I was editing the things that I filmed last year, I realized it was just gonna be super long. I didn't want to cut too much more out of it. So I've decided to just separate them into two videos. So this is just gonna be part one. I'm talking now, but we'll cut to the version of me that was talking a year ago. And then I will get around to filming a video where I'm going to talk about that third and fourth trimester kind of life and get into more stuff then. One of the reasons why I decided to split them up is actually one of the things I do outside of YouTube. In fact, I don't know why I'm saying outside. The main thing that I do, because I don't really post to this channel as often, even though I'm hoping to get back into it, is I work as Hank Green's editorial assistant. And I was on an episode recently of Dear Hank and John, which I usually like kind of just do background science research for. But I got to take on basically all of the questions that we haven't gotten to that I really wanted to talk about. And I really seized the opportunity to take on any questions related to pregnancy. And it was super, super fun. So I'll link to that episode down below if you want to. It was really great to talk about things like, can you feel your umbilical cord getting cut after you've given birth? You know, like that kind of stuff. And so I would love to answer more questions like that. If you guys have questions about like the science and the experience of pregnancy, like broadly, but also if there are things that I talk about in this video that you want me to talk about more, or if you have questions about that third, fourth trimester life, as well as like delivering a baby, having a baby, like if there's anything you want me to talk about in that video, just leave it in a comment down below, and that will be super helpful for me when I get around to filming it. That is my intro, and now I will cut to the version of me from last year. Hi, I'm Deboki and this is Okie Dokie Boki, and today I'm going to talk about the fact that I'm pregnant, which I'm excited about, but it's also kind of weird to be talking about publicly. I mean, I guess not really, but like it's not inherently weird, but it's something that feels weird for me because I'm also coming off of a history of miscarriage. I've had two, so I just wanted to talk about what that's been like, what it's been like to be pregnant after having had these miscarriage experiences, and also why it feels weird to be talking about pregnancy after that. Like, I don't know. I just have a lot of thoughts about that because it is sort of funny to me, because if you're not new to my channel, you are probably familiar with the fact that I've had two miscarriages because I've made videos about those miscarriages. And the thing that's funny to me, like thinking about making this video, is compared to that, like I have found talking about my miscarriages to actually be pretty easy. Sometimes when I talk about miscarriage, people will be very like kind and appreciative about it. And you know, I get it because it's something that we should talk about more. But I also want to be very clear that when I talk about my miscarriages, I'm doing it for very selfish, petty reasons. Like, yes, there is a deeper pain that I want to talk about and like kind of make clear to people, because I think miscarriage can be a really murky experience for people who haven't gone through it, which like very understandable, right? But I'm also the kind of person where like, if there is a minor inconvenience that happens to me early in the day, every single person I come across for the rest of the day is going to hear about it, right? Like I'm gonna whine about it, I'm gonna complain about it. And I feel like my miscarriages are this major emotional and physical inconvenience that I've had to go through. And the thing that's annoying is that there is like no one to lodge a complaint with. Like there's no department to call, there's no customer service that I get to ring up and be like, hey, this is stupid, I hate it. Like, can we not? And so instead of being able to do that, like I do the thing that I do when I also like get irritated at something in the morning, where it's like, I just want to tell people about it. I do want to say kind of from the outset that one of the reasons why I do want to make this video is I think one of the challenges of having gone through miscarriage for a lot of people is that when you do get pregnant again, it can be really hard to know whether or not you like get to enjoy the pregnancy. And so I am definitely in that boat. Like it has been a weird experience in that way. And so that's like something I just wanted to talk about and kind of get through. And this is not like an advice video. This is not an advice about like what you should do or what someone you know should do to get through pregnancy after you've had miscarriages. I think like pregnancy, miscarriage like is a very, very individual experience. Like your experience of miscarriage is going to be highly dependent on so many factors. And so that means also the way that you're gonna like respond after is also gonna be highly, highly personal. So the goal of this video is not to say like, this is what you should do, or this is how you should think about your miscarriages, or this is how you should think about your pregnancy. I would never want to like make anyone feel the way that like I feel, or to go through their process the way that I go through the process. My goal is really just to talk about the journey that I've gone through, because I feel like that's one of the things with pregnancy that is really kind of cool in a way, like is hearing about people's individual journeys because they're so highly personal. And so you get to like really kind of understand aspects of pregnancy, I think, a lot better if you kind of take it as a very individualized experience. So I'm going to start by just kind of setting some context for what my miscarriage experiences were. If you've been on this channel before and you've watched my miscarriage videos, like a lot of this will be very familiar. My first pregnancy was in August 2021. And I ended up having a miscarriage around the 5 to 6 week mark. So it was super, super early. It happened while I was visiting my husband's family in Texas. And it ended up becoming a really scary experience for me and also for my family, because I ended up having very, very heavy bleeding. Like some of my care was delayed because we were traveling. Like once I started like having like some signs that I was going to have a miscarriage, we decided to return home. But just like the process was delayed for various reasons. And so it just took me a while to get care. And so by the point when I was like, I think I'm bleeding at a level where I should go to the hospital, I had actually passed out like right before I was like gonna call the doctors. And so that was really scary, obviously. And so we had to go to the hospital, had to have a D&C, which is like the surgery to basically terminate the pregnancy. And then I ended up having to get a blood transfusion. It was like a really, I don't know, on top of it being scary, it was just like also physically just such a draining process, because like literally my blood was like draining from me. Like it was it took a while to recover from kind of physically, or like it just took me like a little bit of a while to kind of return to feeling vaguely physically normal, just because I needed blood again. And so that was scary, draining, a lot of different things, right? All wrapped in one. We were able to send out some of the tissue for like testing, and we don't know why that miscarriage happened. It's, you know, one of those many, many, many mysterious miscarriages where you just like, you never get a good explanation for why it might have happened. So I got pregnant again a few months later, so towards the end of 2021, and I had so much anxiety in that pregnancy because of what I had been through with that first miscarriage, where it was so scary, and I was just so scared of anything like that happening again. Everything though went fine. There was a little bit of spotting along the way, but like nothing really that like suggested anything was wrong. And so I had a few ultrasounds early on, but like they were very reassuring. Everything looked good. It wasn't until our 12-week appointment that we found out that actually the fetus's heartbeat had stopped at around 9 weeks. And so the fetus had stopped growing at that point. And so that was a really different experience of miscarriage from my first one, where like the first one felt so like out of control and like kind of like chaotic physically and everything. Whereas this one was like, I found out at the doctor's office and we were able to schedule like a D&C. And so in some ways it was a little bit less scary. It was also, we were fortunate to be able to get some potential explanation for why this miscarriage happened. Basically, there was a chromosomal issue called Turner syndrome, which is where part of the female fetus's X chromosome is missing. And so there are fetuses with Turner syndromes that can go on to become a successful pregnancy, but it is still associated with a high rate of miscarriage. And so unfortunately, that is likely what happened here. You'll never know like definitively. Like I think one of the things that we like really need to emphasize when we talk about miscarriage is just like how hard it is to know for sure that a miscarriage happens for a particular reason. But it is like, I think, highly likely like the explanation for why I had a miscarriage here. So because of my previous miscarriage experience where it got so scary, you know, we decided to go for a D&C again instead of like waiting for the miscarriage to pass. And originally my mindset was like, okay, we're going to schedule this appointment. We're going to end this pregnancy. And then like, once it's taken care of and I'm ready to go, we're gonna try again like right away. Like we're gonna get pregnant again as soon as possible because like I don't know, I think that's like a very common mindset to get in when you are like in some kind of pregnancy journey. It feels like there are these long cycles of like you're going every month like just like on the next cycle, and so it's just like, okay, when can I begin that next cycle? But So I was just like ready to jump back into it. Like that is entirely where my brain was at. And then a few things happened. One was that I decided to like make some plans for travel and stuff where I was like, well, I like kind of have some anxiety about traveling while I'm pregnant. So I think if we schedule some of these trips, maybe we'll actually have to wait a little bit. And so it ended up feeling like, hey, maybe I will take a break for a little bit instead of like immediately jumping back into the whole pregnancy world. But then there was a little bit of a plot twist. I had this weird situation after that second pregnancy and that second miscarriage where actually 6 weeks after my D&C, I had a positive pregnancy test. I had literally just made peace with the idea that actually, hey, maybe I want to take a break for a little bit. So getting a positive pregnancy test was weird. Like it was weird in multiple ways. Like we weren't trying. It was weird on like an emotional level of like, I have literally just turned my brain off of this idea and now I have to get back into the idea. But also it was weird because I was like very sure I wasn't pregnant. Like the only reason I took the test is because like there was something that where like my body and emotions felt the way that I have felt when I was pregnant. Like there's something like going on where I was like, I feel like something's weird and off and like vaguely pregnancy-like, but also I was like, but I know I'm not pregnant. Like, I don't know how I know, but I know I'm not pregnant. So at first when I called my doctors, I was like, hey, I have a positive pregnancy test. They're like, great, we'll see you for your 8-week appointment. And I was like, no. Can we like follow up? Because I feel weird about this. So we actually started tracking my HCG, which is the pregnancy hormone that gets tracked especially in early pregnancy, and with miscarriage, you will see the HCG levels go down. So like theoretically, my HCG levels should have been 0 or like what they consider 0 after my second miscarriage because like, you know, I wasn't supposed to be pregnant anymore, but I did have HCG going on. Obviously, that's why I had a positive pregnancy test. But then it turned out like my HCG levels were going down, but like when we went in for an ultrasound to see what was going on, things looked weird. There were these blood vessels that were thicker, like all this stuff was just like not looking quite right. Basically, there were 3 explanations possible for what was going on. One was that I had stuff left over from my last miscarriage. So it was tissue that was left behind that hadn't been removed with the D&C, which can happen. And like, so maybe that tissue was still like releasing hormones and everything, and it was just taking some time to like fully evacuate or whatever. The second possibility was that I could be having another miscarriage, which like, yay, fun. That's great. Love that for me. The third option, though, is even worse, which was something called gestational trophoblastic disease, which is when you get abnormal cells growing inside of your uterus. And obviously that was the scariest option because that has like the possibility of cancer associated with it. So it was not great. It was a very stressful time. And the thing that's hard about that is that really the only way to rule out that third option is to just keep tracking your HCG and hope it goes to 0. If it doesn't go to 0, it's because there are probably these abnormal cells growing, and so like that's a sign that there's something that you need to take care of. So the goal is just to like wait and see and hope that, yeah, the pregnancy hormone goes away. And that was a long process. I ended up having a good outcome. Like I just want to be very, very clear about this. Like this was very stressful at the time. Eventually, like everything went to where it was supposed to get to. You know, I am very, very grateful because my HCG levels went to 0. I did not have these like abnormal cells growing in my uterus, so I was spared a lot of like physically and emotionally draining experiences that I would have had to go through if that had been the thing. So I just like want to be really, really clear about that. It was still, however, an emotionally draining process as part of this ongoing pregnancy journey, just because like in the week alone of like getting that positive pregnancy test that I had, it was like, I started out the week being like, hey, you know what? It would be good for my mental health if I take a break from trying to get pregnant. I think that might actually be a good thing for me to do. Like doing something that felt like I had agency and control over an otherwise really difficult situation. So then like a few days later being like, but like you could be pregnant now. Like, so actually maybe you want to change your mindset. And then a few days later, finding out, well, actually, you might have cancerous cells growing in your uterus, right? Like that week alone was just like a total mindfuck and felt like the universe was playing a really, really dumb joke on me. And I'm just really lucky that the joke like turned out to be just a joke. At least it wasn't more serious than it needed to be. And so just like, I think going through that experience, I think further affirmed for me, like actually, like we should take a longer break. We should maybe take the idea of stepping away from trying to get pregnant for a while, like more seriously. And my husband is a professor and he was going on sabbatical, which is this period of time where like as a professor, you have a break from teaching and admin duties. And a lot of times professors will go travel to other places. So we decided to go to Norway for the fall. And then we went to Texas for the spring because that's where his family lives. And so it was just like a really nice time. And I'm really glad that we had that option, and I'm really glad that we took it. I think one of the themes of pregnancy is just that it can become so consuming, like whether you're having difficulty conceiving, whether you're having difficulty like me with staying pregnant, like even if you have a successful pregnancy, like pregnancy is just so fucking consuming. And so I just like felt like so much of my life was revolving around planning around this hypothetical that I could become pregnant at any point, that just like stepping back and being like, well, like, why don't we just decide to like take that possibility off the table and just enjoy things for a little bit, like just enjoy what we can without that like kind of looming. And so I feel like that's just been a big part of my pregnancy journey. It's not just the times that I have been pregnant, but also the times where I was able to actively make the choice to not try to get pregnant at a certain point and instead to like enjoy other things. Okay, so I've set up all this context, all this background for what my miscarriage experience has been like. Now let's talk about my current pregnancy. I am currently a few weeks away from the 3rd trimester, which is wild to me. I am due this summer. Again, wild. I'm just like, holy shit. Like I feel like at the beginning of pregnancy, you're like, oh my God, this is gonna take forever. And now I'm hitting that point where I'm like, holy shit, like we're not ready. And then symptom wise, like 1st trimester, I was very tired, but I'm lucky that like I didn't have like really much nausea. Like that's just never been a part of any of my pregnancy experiences. I guess this one I had a little bit more nausea. I had a lot of like smell sensitivity and like a lot of like food. I've become very weird about food. It's very annoying because I usually like love food, and it is weird to be in a place where I'm like, I don't really care. Like, I don't like thinking about food. Like, I hate having to think about what I want to eat. In the first trimester, the exceptions to that were like bread, cheese, and apples. Now, all of a sudden, that's like turned off. Like, so at some point in the second trimester, the apple thing became less of a thing. Now it's more of a berries thing. I also cannot handle spicy food. It gives me such bad acid reflux. Like, it just, I can't do it. And so, yeah, food is weird. I am looking forward to one day enjoying eating again. One of the things that really surprised me with this pregnancy was the fact that I was not nearly as anxious as I thought I was going to be during the first trimester. Like, my second pregnancy, I was miserable with anxiety the entire time. Like, I had trouble sleeping. It was just terrible. And I think very understandably, I had just gone through something really scary. And also I had gone through a miscarriage. Like, you know, it just like that first inkling of like, oh, like pregnancies don't just like happen and go and continue, right? Like I had like confronted that head on, and it had been a traumatic experience. Like I think it's clear, like, yeah, I get why looking back I had a lot of anxiety. I expected to have that anxiety again with this pregnancy, especially because now I've gone through 2 losses. Like, you know, the way that you think about the odds of your chance of a miscarriage are going to change. The way you think about like what you're entitled to in pregnancy is going to change. Like, there's just a lot about having gone through miscarriage now as a repeated experience that I thought was going to make going through that first trimester where things are at their most kind of like, you know, random and like where you really can't predict where things are going to go. Like I thought that was going to be sort of like the overwhelming, daunting emotion that I was going to have to deal with. There are like 3 big reasons that I think are possibly behind this. One of them is just simply time, and especially taking time off from trying to get pregnant and spending that time traveling. And I think a lot of that helped get me out of my own head, and really also kind of gave my husband and me time to contextualize what like pregnancy and having a kid meant to us. And so that eased up for me a lot of the sense of pressure that I think when you're the person who is the pregnant one, like I think it helped ease up some of that pressure that you can end up putting on yourself in that situation, especially when you feel like you're letting your partner down, even though there's like nothing you could have done differently, right? Like, even if objectively I knew that I was not letting my partner down and he never ever did anything to make me feel that way, it's still really easy to get into the mindset of like, I am somehow like depriving us, and especially this person that I care about, like something. Being able to take that time away and spend time together and like really just kind of talk about, well, like what does having a family look like to us? What does it mean to us? What does it mean to us in terms of our overall like sense of contentment, and how much do like we really need this to feel like good about what family is to us? It was just really important to have that conversation because I think it really eases a lot of that pressure. Another big thing, therapy. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I did start seeing a therapist shortly after my first miscarriage because, again, it was like a very scary experience. And so that had already done a lot to help me like through the second miscarriage experience and like that pregnancy. Even though like, yes, I had a lot of anxiety, it was nice to like have someone to kind of talk through that pregnancy with and kind of follow along with. So it helped me manage my anxiety during that time. But I continued talking to her. And so like, I think kind of continuing that conversation even after the second miscarriage, going through like all the bullshit after, and then like while taking this time away for like ourselves was good, and like kind of helped me I don't know, just process the experience and like validate the things that I was scared about, while also just like figuring out a better way of dealing with them, and like, you know, just finding a way to think about pregnancy again in a way that's just like more constructive than just like, this is a thing I need to do. The last thing that I think was like really important to me, I've mentioned this before, it's a book called The Myth of the Perfect Pregnancy by Laura Friedenfeld, and this is a book about the history of miscarriage in America. And there are a lot of miscarriage books out there. I've talked about them in a previous video, and a lot of them are really focused on kind of navigating the experience of grief around miscarriage, and I found that very valuable at the time that I was reading them. But this book is more of an academic look at miscarriage, and it's built around really looking at how our changing relationship with technology, and particularly technologies that like let us see pregnancy earlier on, have changed the experience not just of pregnancy but of miscarriage itself. And there was something about this book that really helped me to kind of see and contextualize some of the issues that I was dealing with personally in terms of like my experiences with pregnancy and miscarriage, and particularly this idea of control. I think pregnancy can be a really disorienting experience because of the way it feels like your body is out of your control on like multiple levels. And miscarriage can really further emphasize that because it is this aspect of pregnancy that is, again, out of your control. And that runs counter to so much messaging around pregnancy, especially because we've gotten so much better at seeing pregnancy at stages that we used to just like only be able to kind of guess at, like that you were pregnant. And so I think there was something about this book that just really helped me understand the ways that like a lot of the messages that we're subjected to as pregnant people that are meant to like help us like maybe have better outcomes of pregnancy, they might be well-meaning, but they're also based on like a really false premise of control rather than just like helping people work with their bodies and kind of like figure things out in the moment. Like it feels like a lot of times you're being asked to have control over an outcome without necessarily actually having the ability to have that control. I don't know, there's just something about this book and like thinking through it that like just helped me process the fact that there is so much uncertainty that goes into pregnancy, and particularly in the first trimester, that like, I don't know, it just helped me accept that in a way that I had a really hard time accepting it before, and kind of just treating the first trimester as the uncertain period that it is, that it might not go the way that I want it to go, but like that I would just have to deal with that. Like I that feels really weird. I don't know how to explain that in a way where it feels reassuring, but there's just something about like having kind of gone through these like various conversations and reading this book and like having therapy and stuff that like just helped me accept that as the reality so that I could focus on the things that were more under my control, like being able to enjoy the pregnancy to whatever extent that I could. I say all that, and then I got to the second trimester, and what was surprising to me is that actually I found my anxiety has been so much worse in the second trimester compared to the first. Part of it might just be that like I've now gone through the first trimester like multiple times, and so like I've like more familiarity with it, and so I think maybe that just like helped me just be like, okay, I now know that this is just like a weird time where things are progressing, but you're in this limbo state where your chances of miscarriage are really high, so you don't really necessarily know if you want to talk about being pregnant or not. But then you hit the second trimester, and it feels like this point at which you're supposed to be able to be like, yeah, I'm pregnant, like now I'm pregnant, like now I can tell people, and yet I have found it really hard to do that. And part of that is just because like when you hit that 13-week mark or so, like, you know, in that kind of transition phase from first trimester to second trimester, there is this period for a lot of people, including me, where your symptoms start to go down, but you're not at a point yet where like you necessarily feel the other signs of pregnancy yet. Like you might be getting a little bit bigger, but like you're not feeling movement yet. There's like not really a lot to indicate like, hey, you're pregnant. And so there's like a little bit of like, man, I kind of miss when I was exhausted because at least I knew I was pregnant. I don't know if that's how everyone feels, but I think when you're in that like weird state of transitioning from one trimester to the next, like that is at least a way that I felt, because I was like, I just want a sign that I'm pregnant. And especially like you go in for your 12-week ultrasound and you're like, great, now I have to wait 4 weeks to go back to the doctor, and we're not even going to do an ultrasound, we're just going to do a little Doppler read. Like, I don't know, it's just like a weird kind of like new limbo state. And so I did have a point where like I sort of debated like, hey, maybe I should get like a home Doppler kit. Like a lot of people will get them. It's supposed to be a way to be able to hear your baby's heartbeat. I think a lot of doctors really discourage people from getting home Dopplers because it can create anxiety where like if you're not able to find the heartbeat, it might just be that like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to find them a heartbeat. Like it might just be difficult, and people still get them. And I think for some people it's very reassuring. I ended up making this like very firm decision to myself that I was not going to get one because I felt like for me, and again, this is strictly for me, I am not judging anyone who like went the Doppler route and has found them reassuring. Like if that has been good for you, I am happy for you. For me, I felt like it was going to create a dependence on this measurement that I ultimately didn't want to have. Like kind of related to that, one of my nurses had said like, hey, you know, based on your history, if you're ever at a point where you need like a reassurance scan, like you want to just kind of come in and make sure that everything's okay, like you can go ahead and do that. And at 13 weeks, I was really tempted because I was like, you know, I just went in at 12 weeks, but what if something has already gone wrong right away? But I decided not to, because I think one of the lessons for me from my second miscarriage is that reassurance really only lasts so long. So like I said, I had that with my second miscarriage. I found out at my 12-week ultrasound that the baby's heartbeat had stopped at 9 weeks. I had actually had an ultrasound at 8 weeks and everything had looked fine there. So it really, like, that reassurance technically really only would have lasted a week before it was wrong, right? And so I just knew that if I had these mechanisms to reassure myself, I was just going to become really dependent on them. You know, I could get the reassurance of like having an at-home Doppler, or I could get the reassurance of going in for a scan, but like that reassurance was really only going to last me like a short period of time before I knew my anxiety was going to kick in again and make me seek it out again. And so for me, and for like the things that have been important in terms of enjoying this pregnancy, removing that as an option was something that I kind of needed. I think for some people it is reassuring in a way that is productive for them. For me, it was not going to be productive, and at least for my goals with this pregnancy, it was not going to be useful for me. So I am glad that I went that route for this pregnancy. And I think one of the things too is like as you get further along in the second trimester, like I got a bump now. I got kicks now. Sometimes I get bad round ligament pain and it fucking sucks. You know what people don't tell you about? Your round ligaments. Like they hurt. They can really hurt. They're like these ligaments that go down, I guess, like your body, and like when things are stretching out, like you can have days where like you'll suddenly move and those round ligaments, they're like, fuck you, bitch, you shouldn't have moved that way. And it hurts. Despite trying to act as if like I have got this anxiety thing figured out. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it has been weird for me to like work on this video. I have like fully intended to make this video from like the beginning of my pregnancy, like not even from the beginning of this pregnancy. In general, from the moment I think like I first talked about my miscarriages, I have always felt like one day if I have a pregnancy that like goes well, I would like to talk about the experience of like navigating that pregnancy after having had these really shitty experiences. And I like have never really second guessed my decision to talk about my miscarriages. Whereas with this, like I have been surprised by how long I have put off making this video, because I really thought originally like, you know, I'm gonna get to the end of the first trimester, I'm gonna like kind of feel good about the fact that I haven't had a miscarriage hopefully, and then I'm gonna make this video. Whereas actually it's only gotten harder. Like I feel like in the first trimester I was like more optimistic about the fact that I was gonna do this. I was thinking about how I wanted to approach it, and instead like I got to the second trimester and it felt so much more anxiety about talking about pregnancy in a public way. But it's even just like telling friends and family about our pregnancy that's been like kind of just, I don't want to say scary, because it's not scary, because, you know, I think all of our friends and family like are very supportive. The point is just that like going from like I told a few people about pregnancy early on to kind of like expanding beyond that after that point was like kind of scary. Like it's been like kind of anxiety inducing, because I just like have so much anxiety around like, well, like what if something goes wrong? right? And like, I don't even want to say it now in this video because I want everything to go right, you know? And you don't get to control that. Even at this point, like, I've made it past through that miscarriage stage. There's still ways to go, you know, and you don't know what's going to happen. And so one of the things that I've thought about in terms of why it was easier for me to make those miscarriage videos compared to this is because the miscarriage itself is an outcome. Like, I knew how those pregnancies ended, and it was really hard. It was really difficult, and it was still easier to talk about because I had something to sort of wrap my mind around and to feel like at least I knew the story of those pregnancies. And this is a story that is like still ongoing, and there's so many aspects to it that like I don't know yet, and that is really hard. And I could have waited until the end of this pregnancy, which will hopefully be with a baby that like we're really excited to meet this summer. But like, I also, in the same way that like not getting a Doppler has been important to me, it has been important to me to sit down and do this because I like talking about pregnancy. I like talking about miscarriage, and I feel like I don't want the entirety of like what I talk about to be so focused on that negative thing. Like, I also want to have space for this kind of like uncertainty of pregnancy that feels okay. So that's why I'm talking about it. I think also like there's just something fundamentally hard about pregnancy that can also be potentially good, which is the way it like shapes your relationship with your body. And I think that's something for me over the past few years that like miscarriage has really shaped. Like, it's done a lot to affect the way that I think about my body and the way that I listen to my body. So like, for example, with fitness, like I'm someone who really, really likes working out. It's annoying, whatever. But like for a long time, like through college and grad school and everything, I really liked workouts that felt like punishment, like, you know, like CrossFit kind of style workouts and stuff. But it took me a while to kind of realize like I'm at a point where that is not what my body wants, like especially the past 2 to 3 years. I made this decision to shift to more like body movement focused kind of workouts like bar and Pilates. I'd done yoga before, but I kind of like started like changing the way that I kind of approached yoga too. And I feel like they've given me a different conversation with my body than I was doing when I was like squatting with a heavy bar. And I think the other thing like is I am learning to like coddle myself more. Like that's been kind of a word that I've like used a lot throughout this pregnancy. Like I feel like the two words that I like use a lot to think about like what my decisions are is coddling and indulgence, because like, you know what? I feel like I've been through some bullshit. Like I feel like it's stupid. And even besides that, like even aside from that, even if I hadn't gone through that bullshit, like I think pregnancy is hard. What a wild statement, okay, controversial. Like a lot of people who have dealt with pregnancy and like dealt with the medical system in the US, I have had complaints. I have had issues. And so I am trying to make this experience like as positive and coddled for myself as possible, like within reason. Like, you know, I don't want to get like crazy here, but like I want to take steps that help me like, I don't know, sit in this pregnancy and like approach delivery also in a way that will hopefully make it a little bit less scary. So like one of the things we decided to do with this pregnancy is get a doula. And I'm really, really glad because she's been awesome, and it's really helped me to have a sense of agency with this pregnancy that I haven't had before. And I think especially like kind of better understanding the delivery process with her and kind of understanding like what are the things that we can do to kind of like make this experience something where like at every step of the way, my husband and I feel like we understand what our options are, what kind of factors we want to take into account when we're making our choices, like having us be able to have those conversations now as opposed to like in the middle of everything. Like, I'm glad. Like, obviously, I don't know how delivery is gonna go. I don't think like doulas guarantee that you're gonna like have a trauma-free delivery at all, but I think like for me at least, what I'm hoping is that it will give me more agency over a process that is often for people really hard to find agency in, because it can be difficult. I've also been doing prenatal yoga, like a prenatal yoga class, and I love it. And so like, I definitely feel like if you're like pregnant and you're like debating, if I would suggest checking one out. At least for us, like the class that we do is really structured in a nice way where like we do like kind of like a little intro flow, and then in the middle we do like a little introduction phase where we all go around, we talk about where we're at in pregnancy, and we talk about anything that's come up. And I have really appreciated that, because it has been really great to be able to hear from people's experiences and kind of get a sense for like what's coming up. Like, what are the future aches and pains that I gotta worry about? I will also say, when I started doing prenatal yoga, I started at like that 13-week mark, and at that time I was like, this is kind of chill, great, whatever. Man, the past few weeks I have needed that class. Like, the way that my muscles are handling the expansion of everything, and not just my muscles, I don't know, just like the way things are growing, like I said, it kind of hurts sometimes. And so having the prenatal class to kind of better understand how to handle those aches and pains as they're happening has been good. I say all this knowing that I'm going to get into the 3rd trimester soon. And like, again, it's great to be in that class to learn about what the upcoming weeks are like. And I know that I think it's only going to get more uncomfortable from here. So that's great. That's fun. But yeah, so I am glad that like I have been doing that. And so, you know, there have been other things, like we decided to change the practice that I'm like going to, in part because actually 2 doulas that like both of the doulas we were interviewing both were like, when we mentioned like, hey, we're not sure how we feel about our practice, they like mentioned this other practice in our system. And so there's just been other kind of small changes to, I mean, I guess that's actually kind of a big change because that changes where I'm delivering at. And so there have been other things too, right? Like there's just like a lot. But I do feel like one of the things, like for me coming out of those miscarriages, like I hate that I went through them, right? I resent them deeply. They fucking sucked. They were stupid. They were bullshit. I could sit here and list off just like every word that I want to use to describe them, and we would be here for a while and they would all be negative and it would get repetitive, but whatever. You know, I hated them. But I also feel like if I'm going to take anything positive from those experiences, I think it's that they taught me how to better understand my body and how to better understand what I need from other people around me, whether that's like my family, whether that's doctors, whether that's doulas, like therapists or whatever. It's like just really helped me to better have those conversations with myself and other people, and figure out the ways that like I rely on others to take care of myself. I feel like this video ended up turning out a lot more ambiguous than I originally thought. Like I feel like there was something in my head that thought that like I had very crystal clear thoughts about being pregnant right now, but I think again, because I'm still in the process, there are parts of it that are not going to feel crystallized for a while. And so like hopefully, so like I think it'll be great to check in later and like kind of be able to talk more, like, I don't know, about the whole process. I started out wanting to make this video to kind of like get at this underlying question for myself of like, how do you enjoy pregnancy after having gone through miscarriage? And there is no single answer to that. Like everyone's experiences are their own experiences. It's a very personalized thing, like I've said before. But I do think for me with this pregnancy, the thing that like I always end up returning to is this idea that like, if the reality is that things can go wrong in the future, then that makes it all the more important that while I can enjoy the things that are good, I want to enjoy the things that are good. Like I want to be able to savor those moments, because if something goes wrong in the future, like the anxiety and fear that I feel right now, that is still there. Like it is still 100% there. Like no amount of enjoyment is going to change the ways that like I want the best for this child of mine, right? Like I want this pregnancy to go well, not just for me, but for like this baby, right? Like, I just, there's just so much there that, like, you're never gonna, I think, like, really be able to let go of that anxiety. But, like, also there is just so much, there's so much to enjoy. Like, one of the things that I keep thinking about that feels really stupid, but I don't know, maybe it makes sense. I keep thinking about my mom telling me, like, like the way that moms do, like, oh, when you have a kid, you'll understand, or like when you have a baby, you'll understand. And like, obviously I knew that, right? Like, I knew when she had said that, like, oh yeah, I'll get it. Like, obviously I'll get it. But now that I'm like in the position, I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, this is a lot. I don't know. It's a thing. It's just a thing. Like, where I think what's wild to me, like a thing that I keep thinking about, is like how this baby does not have a name. We barely know what they look like. Like, we know what they look like on an ultrasound. That's like not really like a face yet. Like, we can see features, but like we don't know what they look like. But like, there's so much about this being that is unknown, and yet there are so many people who care about them, and that is just crazy to me. I don't know why that's so crazy to me. It's so crazy to me. I think some of this is just like the anxiety of parenthood. Like, I think at some point you just have to like let go of the idea that you can talk about the experience of like having a child with the sense of like, I don't know, knowledge of like how the whole thing's gonna go, because I think the whole point of having children is that like you don't know how it's gonna go. Like, I don't know what that, like, this is the thing that like I keep thinking about, is like, this is just like step one, right? Like, this is step one of a lifelong process, and so I just want to enjoy this particular step the way that I can, because I know that in the future I'm gonna look back and think about my experience of this and remember how I experienced it. And I want to at least remember the parts that, yeah, again, we're good. Okay, cool. That's me again from present day, even though present day is now still technically past for you, but that's okay. We don't have to talk about that. It was really fun to like kind of go back and edit this video, even though like, yes, I was like in a weird place, I think. Like, hopefully that's clear as I was editing it, like where I was just like so unsure about posting it. And I'm really glad that I decided to not post it, just because it was nice to kind of just not have that lingering, that kind of doubt and anxiety lingering. Just like, I made this decision, let's not post it at the time. And it's also been fun because it's nice to kind of have this little time capsule of how I felt at the time and go back and be like, yeah, that is the thing that I felt. I kind of forgot that, which is surprising because it's so vivid and intense in the moment. And then it's just that you go through so many other vivid, intense things like throughout pregnancy and then giving birth and then having a baby, that some things feel not as intense as they did at the time. So I'm excited to talk more about that kind of end of pregnancy stuff, the delivery stuff, the having a baby stuff. And I'm excited to talk about that because I think there are ways that my miscarriage experience got me to think about some of the choices I wanted to make as I got closer to birth that like actually kind of surprised me. Like, there were some things that I didn't feel strongly about in the beginning of pregnancy that I'm surprised I felt more strongly about later on. There are also ways that it affected me in the newborn phase that I was really kind of taken aback by, partly because like everything in the newborn phase like takes you aback. Like, especially as like a first time parent, like you're just like, oh my God, it's a lot. And it's going to be a lot, but the ways that it's a lot, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I will end this video now. Thanks you guys for watching this video. Let me know again if there's anything you want me to talk about in my next video, either things that are like things from this video that you have questions about or just like thoughts on, or things you want me to talk about in terms of like the science of pregnancy, my experience of pregnancy, all that stuff. Please let me know down below, and bye.